bombshell story from the southwest, looking at illegal migrants being put into retirement homes. We'll see you shortly.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will start off with sunshine and showers, but eventually turning wet and windy through Sunday with a Met Office wind warning in force across a large portion of the country. The reason for this unsettled spell of weather, well, it's all thanks to low pressure situated to the north of the country, bringing us in this westerly flow. So we often bring in fronts, if not some low pressure systems from the Atlantic. Now through into this evening, we will see showers continuing for a time, if not some quite heavy showery outbreaks starting to push into southern Scotland, northern parts of England, some quite heavy downpours associated with this and also some strong gusty winds. Fair amount of cloud around, so temperatures aren't dropping too low, lows reaching around 8 to 9 degrees Celsius. To start off the weekend then, there is going to be plenty of showers, particularly across Scotland through the early hours. This heavy band of showers eventually clearing its way northeastwards, quite breezy at times and still some isolated showers around western coasts. A fairly cloudy start to the day across Northern Ireland, some heavy showers just pushing into western coasts, and elsewhere across England and Wales, a mixture of showers and also some sunny spells. And that's pretty much the theme for the rest of the day. Now most showers are going to be pushing into western areas. Some of these could be heavy at times with some hail and thunder. There should also be some brighter spells though, central parts of England, parts of the east and southeast, but it's still worth keeping your rain jacket close, a risk of showers here too. Temperatures around about average for this time of year, highs reaching around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. Heading into Sunday, and it should remain dry and bright for the first part of the day, feeling a little cool. Things are set to change though, a very heavy and blustery band of rain pushing its way northeastwards, a chance we could see some gales around exposed coast, so turning more unsettled through the course of the day, staying the driest for longest across the far northeast of Scotland. There is a Met Office wind warning issued for Sunday into Monday, so keep an eye on our website for any details.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is your chance to win a motorhome and cash in our biggest giveaway to date. Courtesy of Marquis Leisure, you could be the proud owner of this 2025 Benamar Primero. It comfortably accommodates 4 people and can be driven on your standard driving licence. Plus, you'll also bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Miriam, you can't be serious. Scrapping the triple lock on state pensions? Madness.
Andrew, we just can't carry on pretending. The numbers just don't add up. We've got to be honest with people. We've got to face the facts. That's what people want.
Well, that's what you get on GB News and on Britain's newsroom. Lively debates, lively conversation.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first, and we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, right here on GB News, where I speak up for you, the forgotten majority. Coming up on tonight's show, after Charlie Kirk's shocking assassination in the United States of America, I explain why I believe the left's constant stereotyping of their political opponents as fascists and Nazis and far right poses a real and growing danger to us all. We'll also speak to GB News reporter Charlie Peters, who's been attending a central London vigil being held in Charlie Kirk's honour tonight. Elsewhere, migration madness hits Britain again, this time retirement homes, as a migrant claims that evicting him and his young family would breach their human rights. The European Convention on Human Rights strikes again. And in our last segment, Matt in Conversation, where I speak to an interesting expert, well, tonight I've got something good for you. I'm going to be speaking to James Price, who has just resigned from his position at the Oxford Literary Debating and Union Trust in protest against their incoming president's inhumane celebration of Charlie Kirk's death. That's Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, starts right now. Now, as ever tonight, I want to hear from you. You can let us know your views as we go through the show at gbnews.com/yoursay. And, of course, you can reach us on X over at GB News and all social media platforms. But now it's time for the news.
Very good evening to you. Just after 8 o'clock, well, the top story tonight. Several hundred people have gathered in Whitehall for a vigil remembering Charlie Kirk. The event was organised by Turning Point UK, drawing mostly a young crowd. They're standing quietly beneath a giant Union Jack tonight. And earlier today, US officials named 22-year-old Tyler Robinson from Utah as the man accused of killing Kirk. Investigators say he drove to Utah Valley University, changed clothes on a rooftop before the shooting, and then later abandoned his rifle in nearby woods. Well, earlier, Utah's Governor Spencer Cox confirmed what's known so far about the suspect.
We got him. Investigators discovered a bolt-action rifle wrapped in a dark-colored towel. Inscriptions that had been engraved on casings found with the rifle read, "Hey fascist!" "Catch!" This is a very sad day for our country, a terrible day for the state of Utah, but I'm grateful that at this moment we have an opportunity to bring closure to this very dark chapter in our nation's history.
Also tonight, pressure mounting on Downing Street after the sacking of Lord Peter Mandelson as Britain's ambassador to Washington. He was dismissed over his links to Jeffrey Epstein, links known at the time, but Number 10 says fresh evidence only emerged this week. It's the second ministerial crisis in a week for Labour after Angela Rayner's resignation over her tax affairs. Opposition parties are now demanding the release of vetting documents, but Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper has defended the move.
That decision has rightly been taken, and now our focus continues to be on the work that we will continue to do, not just with the US government, but with governments across the world, under the Prime Minister's strong leadership.
Britain's biggest drug maker has delivered a fresh blow to the UK economy, AstraZeneca pausing a £200 million expansion of its Cambridge research hub. The project was meant to create 1,000 jobs, but now joins a £450 million vaccine plant, also scrapped this year. It means none of AstraZeneca's much-trumpeted £650 million package is moving forward, in stark contrast to its £37 billion pledge in the United States. The Met Police has suspended 9 officers at Charing Cross after allegations of excessive force and discriminatory comments. The Independent Office for Police Conduct says the claims, involving officers from constable to sergeant, relate to incidents between August last year and this January. The same station was at the centre of a damning 2022 report into racist, sexist and homophobic messages. The watchdog says this latest probe will be robust and independent. And a new poll shows what matters most to the public when it comes to the NHS. And, well, it is clear being able to see a GP quickly tops the list. It's the #1 priority for patients, ahead of improvements in A&E and staff retention. Sir Keir Starmer's flagship pledge that by 2029, 92% of people will get routine treatment within 18 weeks, only comes 5th in the rankings. Those are the headlines. I'll be back with you at 9 o'clock for a full roundup. Now, though, it's over to Matt.
Good evening, everybody. Well, welcome back to Friday Night with Matt Goodwin. It's been a difficult week, I think, hasn't it? Well, tonight I'm joined this evening by my panel, acting deputy comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and the contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. Now, where else to start tonight than with the news that has dominated the second half of this week, with the assassination that has sent shockwaves around the world. I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I didn't know Charlie's family. I had hoped that our paths would cross when he recently visited GB News for an interview, but in the end, the timing just didn't quite work out. Yet I was, and I am, a big supporter of Charlie Kirk. Earlier this week, I was actually running around my local park trying to make sense of the brutal murder of Ukrainian refugee Irina Zarutska. And who did I turn to for commentary? Charlie Kirk. And as I listened to his thoughts, I remember thinking how utterly fearless, intelligent, quick, courageous, patriotic and insightful this 31-year-old father and husband was. And then only a few hours later, Charlie would be murdered, assassinated, while doing the very thing that he committed his life to, and what democracy asks of us all. He was in the public square, he was meeting his fellow citizens, he was debating in good faith with people who held different beliefs and opinions, and above all, he was encouraging young people to engage with the political process, to take responsibility for their lives, to become good citizens. He was in many respects an ideal citizen himself, somebody who understood and cherished the importance of deliberation, dialogue, free speech, and yes, healthy disagreement. And perhaps like some of you, I've struggled to sleep since his assassination, thinking about Charlie Kirk's young children, his family, and of course where America goes next. So I started reading something in the middle of the night and eventually came across one line that brought me, and might bring some of you out there, especially our American viewers and listeners, some comfort. It's an old poem from the 1970s. They tried to bury us, it begins, but they didn't know that we were seeds. They tried to bury us, but they didn't know that we were seeds. And indeed, I think it speaks powerfully to what Charlie Kirk was all about, doesn't it? A man who chose to spend his time on this earth moving from one college campus to another, one debating tent to another, one college stadium to another, planting seeds among the young people of America, among his fellow citizens. And doesn't it speak powerfully to what will now surely be Charlie's remarkable legacy, all of those seeds in the years ahead, growing into something that becomes truly powerful, influential and long-lasting, a legacy that his family, his children and their children can look at with an immense sense of pride. Charlie Kirk was a believer in democracy. He was a citizen, a patriot and above all a father, husband and a man of faith. And he'll be missed by many millions of people around the world. And while he only had 31 years to do his work, he still managed to leave a legacy that will continue to shape America and indeed the West for many, many more years to come. Well, as we've just seen, good news came earlier today as a suspect was finally detained. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson has been arrested after his own father tipped him off to the police. And we now know that Charlie Kirk's killer engraved on the bullets that he used, "Hey fascist, catch." And why is this so significant? because language is powerful and it can be dangerous. So let me just say something as we come to a close that very few others are willing to say, because for the last decade, the left across the West have openly derided conservatives and common-sense freedom fighters as fascists, Nazis, far-right agitators. The very same people who tell us that dangerous rhetoric could fuel violence against minorities have themselves openly indulged in dangerous rhetoric about their political rivals. They've whipped their supporters into a frenzy, comparing Donald Trump to Hitler, Nigel Farage to the Nazis, and warning hysterically that we are witnessing the end of democracy. This is, put simply, absolutely absurd. The endless liberal catastrophizing has to stop, and it has to stop now. Otherwise, many people on the left will soon have even more blood on their hands. Tonight, I just want to say this. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Our condolences to your family, your loved ones, and our thoughts to all of our American viewers and listeners who will no doubt be feeling an even greater sense of alarm and concern about the current state and future direction of their country. Well, I'm joined now by tonight's panel, acting deputy comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and the contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. Poppy, what do you think was particularly significant about the events of the last few days, beyond the assassination itself? What's it telling us about America? What's it telling us about the state of politics?
Well, I think we've been hearing a lot in the last couple of years that, words are violence. And I think we found out in the most literal and graphic sense when Charlie Kirk was shot that words are not violence. Murder is violence. This was a man, he spent his entire career going into the lion's den, speaking to people that disagreed with him, speaking to people who sometimes were quite violently aggressive towards him, and continued to do so. And look, I understand. He was a conservative. He held views that a lot of people on the left are going to find offensive. But he was principled. He really was. He stood up for free speech. He was very consistent about that. And I just think, when that gun was aimed at him, it was literally and figuratively aimed at the jugular of freedom of speech in our society, right? So I think we should be completely unequivocal here. This is something you condemn. You don't need to bring up his political views. You don't need to bring up statements that you personally disagree with. Political violence affects everyone in public life, and it must immediately be condemned when it does happen, because it's a stain.
Michael Walker, why do you think so many people on the left in America, and indeed I've seen some commentators here in Britain, struggle with just this very simple, straightforward condemnation that Poppy points to? Why have so many people rushed to try and provide context for a political assassination in a way that they certainly didn't do with previous deaths in America?
To be honest, I haven't really seen that. I mean, I have seen that from some fairly anonymous accounts on Blue Sky or Twitter. But what I've seen pretty much everyone do is come out and say, or anyone of note, let's say, is come out and say, political violence is wrong, this was absolutely wrong, this must be condemned. I mean, it's interesting looking over to the United States, where obviously this has happened, where it's more urgent, where you've got all of these left-wingers from all over the Democratic Party, Mamdani, you've got Bernie Sanders, you've got AOC, all coming out and saying political violence is absolutely wrong, we need to all take a step back, we all need to calm down. And then you've got Donald Trump coming out and saying now is the time for revenge against the entire left, who are all responsible for this killing. So I absolutely agree. Political violence, absolutely wrong. I do think that if you're looking for sort of principled condemnations of political violence, Trump and his ilk are not the people to look at right now.
I'm just going to say the temperature has been kind of rising. It's been like a tit-for-tat rising. Again, I'm not going to defend the stance that Donald Trump has taken, even though actually it's a little bit of exaggeration. Some of his proxies, I think, have gone too far and have used this as an excuse to, again, turn the temperature up a little bit more. But you cannot deny that there have been a lot of people on the left who have been using their own names, who work in government offices, who've been saying this is a good thing. They've been laughing at it, and this is less of an explicit thing. People saying, I think Charlie Kirk was abhorrent. I think he was hateful, but obviously political violence is bad. OK, and I think there has to be a distinction here. I think when anyone has their life threatened for the things they say, Ezra Klein, I think, did this best, right? He said, not going to talk about what Charlie Kirk stood for. OK, he was a principled man, he stood up for free speech. This is wrong. this will affect everyone. And I think that's exactly the stance that we in the UK should be taking, OK? It's not to rake through the coals what Charlie Kirk has said, trying to find something out of context that we personally find offensive. You know, we have to stand up and go, this is not what we believe in. This is so dangerous.
Sorry, Mike. Well, I just want to say I'm a little bit confused by some of the things you said in your introduction, because I have to say I've agreed with everything Poppy has said in this section, especially when she said words aren't violence, violence is violence, right? And I do think sort of the idea of calling words violence has been a problem. But in your introduction, you seem to suggest that calling anyone a fascist or calling someone far-right is now delegitimized by the fact of this shooting. And I think that would put you in an awkward position, right? Because, so Jo Cox, her killer shouted Britain first. What did he believe? That sort of liberal elites were putting immigrants before British people. The Christchurch shooter, on his gun, had For Rotherham written. He killed 51 Muslims, and that was a reference to, you know, Muslim grooming gangs that he was now blaming on Muslims all over the world.
I do see.
I suppose I don't understand your position. Do you think words are violence or not?
Well, just to be clear, I see a distinction. What I think we've had in the mainstream debate over the last, pretty much since Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015, is a gradual intensification on the left, in the liberal centre, whereby lots of commentators, countless commentators, legacy media have rushed to say, we're witnessing the return of the Third Reich, we're witnessing the rise of Nazism and fascism. I'm talking about the mainstream debate here, OK? And, you know, from Nancy Pelosi through to even last week, John McDonnell saying that Nigel Farage was a Nazi. And I suspect when you get a guy like this guy that has assassinated Charlie Kirk and the things he's written on his bullets, you know, he has been shaped by this climate in which otherwise, you know, responsible national leaders have led millions of people to believe that we are on the cusp of losing democracy and sliding into the abyss of some, you know, Third Reich hellhole. And I do think lots of people should really reflect, because they're the same people, Michael, as I said in my introductory monologue, the same people who have told us for years divisive, dangerous rhetoric could lead to violence against minorities, but they don't seem to reflect on their own language.
So it has led to violence against minorities, and calling Trump a fascist, seemingly in this situation, sorry, not Trump, Charlie Kirk, seems to have led also to some violence. But the fact that some violence has been committed and they've invoked some words, I'm saying would put you in real problems, because you've often used words which have been invoked in those situations, For Rotherham, Britain first.
But we need a bit of consistency here, right? You know, I would have loved to have seen more people on the left come out and say that Lucy Connolly shouldn't have been jailed. OK? No, seriously, I think you can be consistent in both things. I'm going to come out now and say, I think people on the right who are using this as a weaponisation to try and raise the stakes in America is wrong. I also think that Lucy Connolly shouldn't have gone to jail. I don't think what she was doing was incitement.
She said I don't think she should have gone to jail, actually, but she did say burn down the hotel.
About Lucy Connolly. Let's just keep it on this. Why haven't we heard more people since 2015 onwards, more people in the centre, on the left, just say, look, can we just dial it down? We're clearly not witnessing the return of Nazism and fascism, but this catastrophising has whipped particularly young people, 22 years of age, for example, has whipped young people into believing they're about to lose their society, they're about to lose freedom, and it's just not empirically true.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump did try and overturn an election result. He said it was stolen when it wasn't. So the idea that he's undemocratic, I think it would be bizarre to try and demonise people saying that. I also want to say, you know, before I come on these shows, you always get the list of the 4 topics that you're going to discuss. Last week it was, are we about to have a civil war? And I was coming from the position of, no, absolutely not. This is ridiculous. Why are we raising the stakes so much that a civil war's about to happen?
But I don't see those things as inconsistent, because I think the language of culture war has so often come from people on the left saying these people want a culture war. We are allies. You know, the language of war and conflict today has so often come from the left.
Well, hang on. There's a distinction here, right? Because I think we're getting a little bit muddled, right? There's a difference between saying society is becoming more polarised in America in quite a dangerous way. More people, I mean, there was this amazing Axios report that came out a couple of months ago. More people are coming to Democratic lawmakers and saying, I want to take the fight to Trump. And they meant that literally, not in an electoral sense. Both sides seem to think the next election is going to be the last one. That's clearly a problem. And also saying, when there's an act of political violence, trying to point the finger and say, this is your fault, is not helpful. And I think those two things can be different. You can say that there's a problem when you call people fascists. That does create an environment where dangerous things can happen. But also, you can't just turn every act of political violence into a gotcha moment, you know, and I think that's really important.
Well, we are going to be carrying on this debate, but we are also, just in a moment, going to be going to GB News reporter Charlie Peters, who's been attending a central London vigil being held in Charlie Kirk's honour tonight, right here in central London. And we're going to be hearing from some of the attendees who have gone out to show their support and their respect just after the break. This is Friday Night with Matt Goodwin. We'll see you in 1 minute.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Jeremy Clarkson is being praised for his role in inspiring the next generation of farmers. His documentary shows the ups and downs of British farm life, and now the Royal Agricultural University in Gloucestershire has credited it with a rise in applications. Good stuff, eh? We can now speak with the agriculture student at Gloucestershire's Hartpury University, Joseph Watkins. Joseph, thank you so much for joining me. What a scene you've got there. Do you think it's going to inspire another generation? You're a young man yourself. How has it inspired you at all?
For anyone watching, it's just amazing to see, isn't it? All the different steps they take, all the different revenues which they can create on farm. So I think it's really good for the public. And if it does something to help get people into the industry, I think that's an amazing thing. Agriculture has both a lack of skilled talent and just a lack of people in the industry anyway. So if someone wants to go and do a college course or university course to get into the agriculture industry because they watch Jeremy Clarkson, this old pot-bellied Top Gear man, then I think it's great. And I say that with all due respect. I love Top Gear.
Well, we were talking about the ups and downs of farm life. What are the first of all, let's start with the ups. What are the ups?
They're pretty beautiful ladies, you know, surrounded by 600 lovely ladies. That's certainly something. Working outside, you know, you're working with your hands. It's definitely a rewarding experience to be able to go home after a long day and think, right, everything's taken care of. All of these cows are all happy. Some of the downs, it's difficult, isn't it? You've heard this, I'm sure you know. The family farm tax has been in the news lately. But the early mornings, late nights, being away from friends and family, strenuous jobs, and you know, often at times dangerous. So there's ups and downs to it, but as you can see now, I think the positives outweigh the negatives for me.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News. Now, the UK offshoot of the Turning Point campaign that Charlie Kirk founded back in 2012 held a central London vigil in his honour tonight. From 6 p.m. this evening, crowds were flocking onto Whitehall to pay their respects to a man who has helped shape the politics of a generation. Our national reporter, Charlie Peters, was down there tonight. Charlie, what is the latest?
Well, hundreds have gathered here in central London, just opposite number 10 Downing Street, as people gather to commemorate and remember Charlie Kirk, the influential Christian conservative commentator who inspired millions around the world. And while vigils and dedications have been hosted throughout the United States, this is the first formal event in the United Kingdom, with speakers expected to say that Charlie Kirk's message was one of hope, and that he always engaged peacefully and respectfully with those he disagreed with, and that his message was one of tolerance. He was an advocate for free speech and never for violence. This message echoed by members of both the left and the right in the United States, but Jack Ross, the founder of Turning Point UK here in Britain, the umbrella group founded by Charlie Kirk, is going to say also that Charlie Kirk has been described as a far-right bigot by some members of the press, and that this demonisation is unfair. Instead, this is a decent and honest conservative Christian activist. Now, many people here have also paid their own personal tributes to Charlie Kirk. Earlier, I spoke with Bo Thomas, who said that he was an inspiration to him and his family.
I've come to the Vigil to honour the memory of a good man in Charlie Kirk. Charlie is someone that I would consider a hero, someone who stood up for things that I also believe in. I am a Christian, I share the same faith as Charlie, and seeing what was done to him was just devastating for me and my family. It was horrifying, and it's important to come out and to honour him, to honour his legacy, to help spread his message. I think what happened to Charlie is only going to magnify what Charlie believed and what he stood for and the message that he shared. I think that in trying to silence him, his voice will spread. People that have never heard of Charlie will now be talking about Charlie Kirk. His name is on everybody's lips. And in trying to shut down a good man, they are only going to magnify and exemplify his message more than ever. So I've come today to honour his memory.
While a suspect for the murder of Charlie Kirk is in custody here in London, all people are thinking about is the memory of the man who inspired millions around the world with his peaceful, conservative and Christian messaging.
Well, Charlie also had the chance to speak to some other attendees at that emotional vigil earlier tonight. Take a listen to this.
You're right. He was just getting there with everything. He was getting through to these young people, this lost generation of people that have been indoctrinated by an ideology that does not support Western values.
He represented everything that universities should be about: free speech, open debate, and the way that he was just gunned down in front of his wife and children is just absolutely shocking, and it's just beyond words. It's horrible.
I can't think of somebody that was more influential in bringing freedom of speech to universities at a time when, you know, this kind of corrupt cancel culture is silencing so many young people.
Well, I'm joined now by my panel, acting deputy comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and the contributing editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. Poppy, there was a strong generational aspect to this story. You see a lot of young people there at the Vigil in London talking about, for example, Charlie Kirk's influence on TikTok and so on. So a lot of, I don't know, perhaps baby boomers or older Gen Xers might not have been familiar with who Charlie Kirk really was, but you can see he actually had a very strong connection with younger people, both here in the UK and also America. Indeed, I noticed some of the people, legacy media journalists today, saying, well, why is there such a focus on Charlie Kirk, themselves perhaps in their late 50s and 60s? But for lots of young people, they knew this guy very well.
It's so good you brought that up, Matt, because I actually think one of those legacy media journalists tweeted something along the lines of, why is the Foreign Secretary posting about Charlie Kirk? And I remember thinking, more people under the age of 21 know who Charlie Kirk is than who the Foreign Secretary is, like, hands down. I mean, he's massively influential. I think I actually knew who Charlie Kirk was before I knew who Keir Starmer was. I think one of the attendees of the Vigil really hit the nail on the head. He brought a style of debate to US college campuses that was snappy. It was kind of quite fun as well. It was always slightly light-hearted. Often, some of the students came away looking a little bit silly, but it was pretty brave that he was doing that, right? And he was a real figurehead for like a different youth style of doing debate that actually engaged people. So, he's massive.
Michael, where do you think America goes from here? I mean, how do you see this feeding into the sort of ongoing polarisation of America? We are seeing this country's social contract come under enormous strain. It seems that, left and right can't really talk to one another anymore. Looking ahead, I mean, how do you actually see this feeding into that?
First of all, I'm really glad to live in a country which is not flooded with guns. I think the combination of social media-induced polarisation plus everyone having a gun is not a good combination. I think in America it is especially worrying and I have to say this again, because of the reaction from Donald Trump and the people around him, which does seem to be not to say, let's all take a step back and speak against political violence. He was on Fox News today, and the host, it's Fox News, it wasn't a left-wing host, sort of said there are right-wing and left-wing extremists. And he said, actually, I don't care about the right-wing ones. The right-wing ones, they're trying to keep America safe from immigrants. So you've got a president who's literally saying, I only mind violent extremism from one side. That's incredibly worrying.
Don't you think the Trump camp, just to, if they were here, just to sort of push back on that, the Trump camp's view perhaps would be that, well, we have to make these arguments about where the language of the left has gone wrong because so many institutions in American society now are basically captured by leftists. You look at college, US colleges, universities, you look at large parts of the mainstream media who, for much of this week, by the way, refuse to even cover the Irina Zarutska murder on public transport. Now, there are people in the Trump camp who say, well, actually, we do have to say something about this. And we have a technical failure in the studio because we have now lost the lights.
Just the lights? Shall we continue talking?
And so let's keep talking. Here we go. This is a cost of living crisis. The highest energy prices in the world, just reflected in our studio. I blame the leftists. What about you? But on a serious note, there is something to that argument, right? That Trump's camp is saying if we don't actually critique the Democrats on this, nobody else will.
Well, I just think you're conflating two issues. I mean, if Trump wants to have an argument about academia being more left-wing than it used to be, fine. That's got nothing to do with political violence. And I think at the moment what you're seeing is that Donald Trump and the right wing of the Republican Party are not drawing a red line and saying political violence is wrong.
Michael, I think I agree with you too much, but I'm going to have to push back on two things you said there. First of all, it wasn't that long ago that Joe Biden came out and said that he thought that Donald Trump was fascist-ish. So it's not just that the Democrats are completely unimpeachable, the Republicans are engaging in it. Not that it makes it OK, but I just think it's important that people in the UK know that this is happening on both sides, the polarisation is equal.
But calling someone fascist-ish, it's very difficult to say. It's not the same as advocating for political violence.
The second point I'm trying to make is you have to also put this in context. So there's this very good free speech organisation called FIRE that's been tracking the degree to which college students agree with political violence. That's doubled since the pandemic. OK, that is extremely worrying. So, it is true that what Charlie Kirk was doing 10 years ago has suddenly become a lot more dangerous.
I think also Professor Eric Kaufmann's work has shown that there is a pretty large contingent of people on the left who thought the assassination of Donald Trump would essentially be legitimate. And that, there is an issue here around, as we've seen in some of the research, a kind of contingent on the left that is actually much more politically intolerant than their equivalent on the right. We saw it with Brexit, for example, whereby Remainers were much more likely than Leavers to say they would have a very strong knee-jerk reaction against a relative marrying somebody from the other side. There's this sort of, instinctive hostility that you don't see reflected to the same degree among Conservatives. As Thomas Sowell, I think it was, once said, Conservatives think Liberals are misguided, Liberals think Conservatives are evil.
I think the data does clearly show that when it comes to tolerance of other people's opinions, the left are more intolerant. Now, I don't think that normally leads to shooting someone, and I think actually right-wing violence is much more common than left-wing violence, especially when it comes to serious violence. I suppose you could say that right-wing people tend to be less tolerant of people based on their protected characteristics, right? So it swings and roundabouts. But whether or not we want to encourage young people to say that open debate is important, I think absolutely we should do that. Is Donald Trump or GBNews in a position to say we should stop using incendiary language? I'm less sure.
Poppy, where do you think this leaves America going forward? I mean, where do you think the United States of America actually goes from here?
I think that's a really difficult question. I mean, look, we can all say from our vantage point that we should turn down the temperature, but I think it's really difficult to do that if you are in that hyper-polarised environment. And again, to kind of give a little bit of context for how Republicans have been, they've just seen someone that they've known and loved for more than a decade be shot in front of his wife and children. Perhaps they are responding in a way that is too emotive, but you would be emotive in that situation. Of course, you're going to respond perhaps more stridently than you should. I hope that people can continue speaking freely. And I think the best thing to honour Charlie Kirk's memory is to continue engaging in free and open debate with people that we disagree with, because that's the only way you're going to get past this polarisation crisis.
And that is indeed a great point to end on, because we are about to move on to migration madness, which is hitting our retirement homes. This is absolutely insane, this story. A father claims that evicting him and his family from a retirement home would breach their human rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. You're not going to believe this story, and we're going to be going right to the local area to hear it from somebody who really knows about this. We'll see you in just a minute or two.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
It's a mostly settled picture across much of Europe. Occasional sunshine in places, otherwise lots of sunshine. And that's the story across Spain and Portugal. Mostly settled here, plenty of sunny spells, though we could see some showers affecting Barcelona, also parts of Nice. But elsewhere across Italy, the Adriatic coastline, all the way through into Greece, it should be mostly dry, settled, plenty of sunshine. And that theme will continue as we head into next week, along with the warm temperatures. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will start off with sunshine and showers, but eventually turning wet and windy through Sunday with a Met Office wind warning in force across a large portion of the country. The reason for this unsettled spell of weather, well, it's all thanks to low pressure situated to the north of the country, bringing us in this westerly flow. So we often bring in fronts, if not some low pressure systems from the Atlantic. Now through into this evening, we will see showers continuing for a time, if not some quite heavy showery outbreaks starting to push into southern Scotland, northern parts of England. Some quite heavy downpours associated with this, and also some strong gusty winds. Fair amount of cloud around, so temperatures aren't dropping too low, lows reaching around 8 to 9 degrees Celsius. To start off the weekend then, there is going to be plenty of showers, particularly across Scotland through the early hours. This heavy band of showers eventually clearing its way northeastwards, quite breezy at times, and still some isolated showers around western coasts. A fairly cloudy start to the day across Northern Ireland, some heavy showers just pushing into western coasts, and elsewhere across England and Wales, a mixture of showers and also some sunny spells. And that's pretty much the theme for the rest of the day. Now, most showers are going to be pushing into western areas. Some of these could be heavy at times with some hail and thunder. There should also be some brighter spells though, central parts of England, parts of the east and southeast, but it's still worth keeping your rain jacket close, a risk of showers here too. Temperatures around about average for this time of year, highs reaching around 18 to 19 degrees Celsius. Heading into Sunday, and it should remain dry and bright for the first part of the day, feeling a little cool. Things are set to change though, a very heavy and blustery band of rain pushing its way northeastwards, a chance we could see some gales around exposed coast, so turning more unsettled through the course of the day, staying the driest for longest across the far northeast of Scotland. There is a Met Office wind warning issued for Sunday into Monday, so keep an eye on our website for any details.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News. Now, it's time for a pretty shocking story that I found in a local newspaper earlier today. Shared it on social media. It's unbelievable. The Reading Chronicle has reported that a 59-year-old actually, sorry, a 55-year-old, is using the European Convention on Human Rights to fight his eviction from a local retirement home alongside his 28-year-old wife and 3-year-old twins. Shahidul Haque, who's on benefits, who says he's disabled, he suffers from depression, said that he didn't know it was against his tenancy to move his young wife and children into the retirement home, where he was paying £110 a week for accommodation, because he couldn't read his tenancy agreement because he couldn't speak English. Now, the family have been served with an eviction notice after their rowdy behaviour drew complaints from other care home residents, elderly residents, and he is now arguing that if he is evicted from this retirement home, that this would be a breach of his human rights under the European Convention on Human Rights. The argument being that he and his family have not yet been offered alternative accommodation. Now, while Haque's children are British, his 28-year-old wife arrived on a spousal visa, moving straight into the retirement home with her husband and their children. Well, joining us to discuss this remarkable case, shocking case from Reading, is Conservative Council Group Leader, Councillor Raj Singh. Councillor Singh, just for our viewers at home and listeners on the radio, can you just tell me what on earth has allowed this complete insanity to occur?
Firstly, thank you for having me, and my condolences for Charlie Kirk and his family. Any political violence, left or right, it should be condemned across and globally.
Yeah.
On this particular point, I have no sympathies. Prima facie, what I've read in the news. First thing, the gentleman has managed to fill the forms for asylum seeking, which is more than 40 pages. He's able to get a house for himself. Again, he has to fill forms, get benefits as well. Again, he has to fill forms and do the visa application for the wife. And someone then claims that he did not understand the contract details. It's, for me, bonkers. Secondly, we have 1 in 400 veterans homeless, sleeping rough and living in a refuge. So anybody who needs access to this kind of housing, who are of certain age, it should be the veterans, and they should be prioritized. So for me, it's been bonkers.
So essentially what we have here, let's just be clear, we have the UK state subsidising housing for this local guy who's come into the country, and they've decided to put him into a retirement home, charging £110 a week, which is, you know, pretty good deal for his perspective, alongside elderly residents, and then he brings his family over a few months later, which violates the tenancy agreement, and he says he can't actually read the agreement because he says he can't speak English, and he's also suffering from depression. What's the reaction been like locally to this story? Because when I read it, to be frank, I couldn't believe it. And we've seen some pretty shocking things here in Britain, but this is really insane. What's the reaction been like locally?
Since the news has come out, I've spoken to a number of my colleagues, residents, and I haven't found a single person who has shown sympathy to this, because there's a clear lack of, this sense of fairness. It's at stake here. It's clearly someone who appears to game the system, who knows what to do at what stage. And you need to keep in mind he has been living in this property, and there's around 60 to 70 properties around. So clearly it's of certain age. He must, even if he did not understood the contract, he should have seen people living around him of a certain age. And therefore it doesn't make sense to me. The second thing the residents are really not happy about is the case would be heard on 6th of January. That's too long. And they think the whole justice system needs to be rehauled as well. And so we don't see these kind of cases happening. And actually, who are genuinely need asylum, they get what they need. But clearly, we have some people who are gaming.
Indeed. Well, thank you, Councillor, for joining us this evening. We really appreciate it. We're just going to turn to our panel here in the studio, Acting Deputy Comment Editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn, and the Contributing Editor at Novara Media, Michael Walker. Poppy, there is something, I mean, you read these stories every day almost in the UK, but there is something especially insane about this one. As the councillor just said, Where's this sense of fairness gone in Britain? I mean, this is absolutely absurd.
I know. I mean, I think what you just said, you read these stories every day. That's exactly the point. You know, people always say, oh, we were just cherry-picking examples. Well, this one didn't even make the national news. This was just in a local newspaper, and it seems to hit every single element of unfairness that you could possibly think of. Firstly, the man doesn't speak any English, that his wife came over on a spousal visa, that he's being housed in a retirement home. But this is precisely because our asylum system is not fit for purpose. You're going to get cases like this as long as it remains.
Michael, it's not just this case. We're also reading in one of the national newspapers today, the government's got a plan to put illegal migrants in student accommodation. So we've got retirement homes, we've got student accommodation, now becoming, apparently, the destination for this migration crisis. What on earth is happening?
Yeah, I suppose just to go back to this story, I mean, I've only read the article in the Reading Chronicle. I don't know the details, but it does seem to me that a key part of this is there are 2 British kids, right? So if there are 2 British kids, then the local authority is going to have an obligation not to make them homeless. So it doesn't seem like they're living in the right place in terms of that retirement home. But I think there is a problem in this country where you've got lots of local councils who have obligations to house children and they don't have any homes to put them in. And I would say, actually, they'd be in a much stronger position if we didn't sell off all the council homes in the 1980s.
And the use of the European Convention on Human Rights?
Well, I mean, this hasn't gone to court yet. One would hope that that's not going to be the basis in which the judge says he can stay in the retirement home.
Well, bonkers Britain continues at pace. You know, it's not even bonkers. I think that word is not quite right. It's outrageous. Anyway, still to come tonight, it's time for Matt in Conversation, where tonight I'm going to be speaking to somebody called James Price, who has just resigned from his position at Oxford Literary Debating and Union Trust in protest against their incoming president's inhumane celebration of Charlie Kirk's death. He's going to reveal all next in an exclusive with us. Friday night with Matt Goodwin. I'll see you in 1 minute.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Friday Night with me, Matt Goodwin, on GB News. Now it's time for Matt in Conversation, where each week I sit down for a frank, no-nonsense discussion with somebody I think is really interesting. And this week I'm going to be speaking to political commentator and former Conservative Party advisor, James Price, because James has tonight announced his resignation as the Honorary Secretary of the Oxford Literary Debating and Union Trust, the charity which owns Oxford Union buildings. And his resignation is in protest against the incoming Oxford Union student, George Aberonu, who callously celebrated Charlie Kirk's death in WhatsApp messages. James, thank you for joining us this evening. Just give us a sense of what led you to this decision, having observed the events of the last day or two.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me on. I think a lot of people know about the Oxford Union, and it has this fairly unique place, actually, for the last couple of 100 years. It's over 200 years old now in British history. I think most infamously, there was a vote in the 1930s that said that this house would, under no circumstances, fight for king and country, and that was a motion that won, and it led Hitler, according to the legend, to think, well, the Brits won't fight against us. You know, the flower of British youth doesn't want to go to war. I can go and do all my dastardly things. And it's had that kind of outsized influence. People like Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, lots of other prime ministers and cabinet ministers and so on have been president of the place, and it's a very exciting chamber to get to walk into and to debate and the kind of big topics and all these sorts of things. I think it should be a privilege to be involved in it. I was very privileged to be involved in there in my time as a student, and then slightly weirdly I went back again during lockdown when I accidentally became the oldest ever president in a kind of guerrilla online campaign that got out of hand, and I won. So I went back there 5 years ago, and I saw all the sorts of the wonderful students being cowed by the kind of height of wokery. This was not long after the horrible George Floyd killing and all these other sorts of incidents, and people were terrified to speak on campus if you were anywhere to the right of Chairman Mao. It seems, however, the people to the left of Chairman Mao are now in positions of influence in this institution, to a point where, after this just despicable political assassination that your channel has covered so well happened, the president-elect, so that the student who will take over running the Oxford Union in a few months' time, said in some group chats, "Charlie Kirk is dead, let's F-wording go," and lol, meaning laugh out loud, in some other context. Now, he did delete these things, but not before people managed to get some screenshots of it. And in his so-called apology, this horrible little urchin said, "Oh, that's not who I am." But of course, Charlie Kirk did hate gay people, and he did hate Palestine, he did hate all of this. So it's a bit ironic, really, isn't it? Which is the worst apology I think I've ever heard. And I just think that someone like that, who's so ill-suited for the kind of privilege of being in charge of something like the Oxford Union, shouldn't be allowed to stay in post anymore. And I think that this hopefully will in some small way put some pressure on this person realising they have to resign, or the powers that be forcing him out.
Indeed. Now, James, we should say that Oxford Union has condemned the comments, but they're saying they're not going to block this chap from becoming their new president. Now, that decision, of course, has prompted anger across the country. I mean, I did have a look at this guy online, and one of the things, to be frank, that I found rather astonishing is how he got into Oxford in the first place, because his grades weren't particularly strong, and dare I say it, that perhaps diversity, equity and inclusion had something to do with this.
Yeah, I've seen some of that as well, that the offer that the grades that he got, that he put on a LinkedIn page, do seem slightly suspiciously low compared to what I had to do to get in myself a long time ago. But I think that what we've got here is a set of people coming through not just the Oxford Union, but all of these sorts of wonderful old institutions across British life, who don't care about them. They don't care about that history. I told the story of the debate about Hitler. There are all sorts of fun stories of people in the 19th century involved in this, and lots of other wonderful British institutions where people have kind of got involved, not because they want to be a part of that story, not because they think it's something to live up to, but because they think it's something either they can live off or worse, that they can use to kind of wipe their muddy boots with in order to enhance their sort of left-wing credentials. So a few terms ago, President of the Union had a debate where actually some friends of mine were involved. It was an Israel-Palestine debate. They were treated abhorrently. People were screaming abuse at them in Arabic in the chamber, and just awful anti-Semitic things happened. And this person afterwards basically went back home to Egypt and said, I've done it, I've decolonized the Oxford Union, I'm a hero, aren't I great? And I think this is something that's happening across institutions, and that our old ways of doing things, of trying to play nicely in the sort of liberal framework and of saying, well, but what about free speech? Well, these sorts of rights are very important, and it's what's built our civilization. But it only really works when everybody buys into either the institutions or the rights and freedoms that underpin them. And I think that increasingly we've just got people, it doesn't matter where they come from or their colour or creed, who don't care about these things. And if we don't care about these things, we're going to lose them. And it will be very hard, if not impossible, to get them back.
Indeed. Well, of course, I spent 20 years in the universities myself. I saw the creeping, the insidious spread of these ideas and these theories firsthand, and we've got to do something about it, that's for sure. James Price, thank you for joining us tonight and talking us through your important decision. Now, coming up tonight on Patrick Christes's show with Nana Acquia, and a live studio audience is coming up right after this show. Well, Nana, what have you got coming?
Well, of course. Fabulous studio audience join me. We'll be talking, of course, what is going on in the world of politics, where somebody can say how they feel about something in a very respectful manner and then be killed in this way. So what is happening to political discourse in this country? Why are we behaving like this? And there are people actually celebrating it, like people in really important places, people who head up universities. Then, of course, we've got to talk about Mandelson. He's gone. But what's going on with Pat McFadden? Is he the next person to go? Is he the fall guy for Keir Starmer? Or perhaps will Keir Starmer be the next to go? Perhaps he needs to go. What do you think? We've got loads coming up on the show. I've got a fabulous panel. Plus, we'll be going live to Ben Leo, who's in Washington, D.C., to get the latest on what happened with Charlie Kirk. But first, let's get your latest news headlines after the weather.
Today's outlook: cool, calm and completely horizontal. Boxed Aircon sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend will start off with sunshine and showers, but eventually turning wet and windy through Sunday, with a Met Office wind warning in force across a large portion of the country. The reason for this unsettled spell of weather, well, it's all thanks to low pressure situated to the north of the country, bringing us in this westerly flow. So we often bring in fronts, if not some low pressure systems from the Atlantic. Now, through into this evening, we will see showers continuing for a time, if not some quite heavy showery outbreaks starting to push into southern Scotland, northern parts of England. Some quite heavy downpours associated with this, and also some strong gusty winds. Fair amount of cloud around, so temperatures aren't dropping too low, lows reaching around 8 to 9 degrees Celsius. To start off the weekend then, there is going to be plenty of showers, particularly across Scotland through the early hours. This heavy band of showers eventually clearing its way northeastwards, quite breezy at times, and still some isolated showers around western coasts. A fairly cloudy start to the day across Northern Ireland, some heavy showers just pushing into western coasts, and elsewhere across England and Wales, a mixture of showers and also some sunny spells. And that's pretty much the theme for the rest of the day. Now, most showers are going to be pushing into western areas,